Hello everyone, Sam here from Mind Body Medical. So in this video, I want to talk about a really profoundly important self-care practice that I think we should all adopt in the context of Alzheimer's prevention. So Alzheimer's disease is a public health time bomb at the moment. It's rapidly becoming the leading cause of death in many Western countries. It's affecting more people at a younger age. And the challenging thing is that there's been very little progress made in the last 30 years in terms of pharmaceutical drug treatments. But there is hope. There is definite hope. In the last 3 or 4 years, there's been a real paradigm shift in our understanding of what Alzheimer's is, what causes it, how we can prevent it, how we can manage it, and how we can reverse it. And some of the research coming out in terms of how to facilitate that has been absolutely profound. Probably some of the most game-changing research that I've seen in my professional career. And the fascinating thing is that what's facilitating that this paradigm change is lifestyle medicine, self-care, lifestyle practices, dietary protocols, herbal medicine, supplement regimes. And when that's all tied together, the impact, what the evidence shows in terms of our ability to prevent Alzheimer's, to manage Alzheimer's, and even to reverse Alzheimer's, very clear published evidence, clinical evidence around our capacity to achieve that. And one of the things I want to talk about today lies right at the foundation of that model. It's the cornerstone of the model, and it's called the 12-3 model, the 12-3 model. And it's to do with not so much what we eat. What we eat is a whole different topic we'll talk about in a subsequent video, but this is how we eat, and more specifically when we eat. And the 12-3 model involves making sure we eat all of our calories. Every single calorie we consume over any given day is all consumed within a 12-hour window at most. So if you eat breakfast at 7 in the morning, you need to have finished your evening meal by 7 in the evening. And ideally, if you can make that 10 hours, 10 or 11 hours, so much the better, but always within 12 hours. And the 3 relates to making sure that we eat our last meal at least 3 hours before going to bed. So the 12-3 model, the 12 relates to eating all of our calories within 12 hours. The 3 relates to having our last meal at least 3 hours before we go to bed. And why is this so important? It's so important because if we look at the evidence around what are the really integral foundational mechanisms that cause Alzheimer's to develop in the first place, that cause it to progress more quickly, insulin resistance is right at the heart of that model. Insulin resistance must be one of the most significant risk factors for developing Alzheimer's. And all insulin resistance means is where our cells, in this case, our brain cells, are unable to fuel themselves with glucose because insulin essentially carries glucose into the brain cells. And if our brain cells are resistant to insulin, we can't get the glucose into our brain cells. And if we can't do that, our brain cells essentially starve. They starve in a sea of glucose because they can't actually use it. And brain cells that are resistant to insulin is the fast track to deteriorating brain health, risk factors for Alzheimer's. If we can increase insulin sensitivity, if we can increase our brain cells' ability to fuel themselves with glucose, our risk factors reduce massively. It's hard to emphasize the significance of this. And the single most effective way of increasing our brain cells' ability to use insulin, to become sensitive to insulin, is fasting. Is making sure we have a fasted period every day. And that 12-3 model is the most effective way of facilitating that, because every day, week after week, month after month, year after year, we're consuming our meals within 12 hours, 3 hours before bed. That gives us a prolonged period every 24 hours where we've got at least 12 hours of being in a fasted state. And by being in a fasted state for at least 12 hours every day, which the 12-3 model facilitates, it just means that we keep our brain cells sensitive to insulin. As if we can do that, as we age from our 40s into our 50s, into our 60s, into our 70s, into our 80s, if we can keep our brain cells sensitive to insulin, then our capacity to prevent ourselves coming down with diseases like Alzheimer's is absolutely profound. I can't overemphasize that enough. And I think if everyone in the world did just one thing to reduce their Alzheimer's prevalence, that would be the foundational mechanism. There's loads more, and I'll talk about it in subsequent videos, but please try and alter your eating patterns so you're eating your meals within 12 hours and your last meal 3 hours before bed, because it's not all doom and gloom with Alzheimer's. We have this profound capacity to protect ourselves from it. Our ability to do that comes from our lifestyle, our diet, our behaviors, herbal medicines, and that's completely within our control. But it starts with keeping our brain insulin sensitive, and the 12-3 model is how to facilitate that. So please adopt that, or begin to adopt it. If you have any questions, let us know.